Welcome to the Brothers Dim. Today we're talking about what is the right amount of distraction in your life. But first, we're gonna reflect on what did you want to talk about?
We talked about HBO's miniseries Chernobyl. I had a clarity on it after listening to it. We kept saying the Soviets or what have you in Chernobyl were trying to cover this all up and make it not seem so bad to save face. They didn't want to look bad. They didn't want to admit that they had cheap machinery, that they screwed up, and they exploded a nuclear reactor, and it caused a very big problem to anyone in the surrounding area. And we kept saying, they're doing that to save face. How did they not realize that when history realizes what they're doing, that not only did they blow up a reactor, but they locked people in, they covered it up, they lied, they killed more people than was necessary. How do they not realize that saving face, they're doing the opposite? Because when history shows that they're wrong and what they actually did, people will be appalled. It wasn't just, we fucked up, we bought cheap shit and it exploded. I can almost give that a pass. But then when they did all that other horrible shit, I'm thinking that's the worst you could possibly look.
But we don't know how often it works. I'm sure there are tons of things in history where something terrible happened, they pretended it didn't happen, and they covered it up, and it worked, and no one ever heard about it, and it just disappeared in history. Because there was a bunch of stuff in school, I remember going through high school, learning a bunch of shit, and then going to college and becoming an adult, and then going, a bunch of the shit they taught me in school wasn't true, right? They have some alternate history going on, right? The story that we tell, how aligned it is with reality, I don't know, but clearly it's not perfect. And because that's true, because there's so much manipulation and we're so often telling stories about reality instead of actually acknowledging it, you can get away with this kind of shit, right? But we just don't know when it works, because when it works, it just disappears.
Yeah. Did the truth seep out, or was it shrouded in their, manipulations and their lies? And what doubly confuses me is you can hide some stuff, or you can mutate the narrative. But with Chernobyl specifically, how did they ever think that they could get away with saying it didn't explode? Because at some point, people are going to see that it did explode. It's not bury it and pretend it didn't happen. So that's the one that really irks me, is they knew people were going to realize it exploded. They still tried to hide it. And what could possibly look worse or stupider than that?
Well, then answer this for me. Tell me with 100% certainty exactly what happened with the coronavirus. What happened? Because this is not 50 years ago.
Yeah.
This is right now. And it's also the entire world. What's your certainty level for exactly what happened?
I'm 95% sure that this is the story. And I don't know if this was this is only my opinion.
I think you're being arrogant by saying 95%, but I'll listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, maybe it's less than that. But a lab in China was researching this virus. They were trying to make it more deadly, mutatable, easier to pass and be contagious. So they're researching this thing, and you can say in an effort to get ahead of it, so that if they come across a virus that's worse and like this, then we can handle it better. And instead, that virus got out, and then all their little research didn't help because we didn't know what to do with it. And they weren't forthright with it, and it was all trying to be concealed or this or that. But I'm pretty sure, maybe not 90, that some version of that is reality.
Well, I do think you're being overconfident until that last moment when you said some version of that.
Right.
I'm likely to believe it's possible that a lot of what you said is more likely than not, but the higher percentage you give for how confident you are, I just think that's unrealistic, because we're getting our information third hand. You weren't in the lab. And if you were in the lab, you wouldn't understand anything that was happening. I've never seen the virus. Would you understand what the fuck you were looking at? Would you understand the implications of how gain of function research works and why it might be that and not just coming from an animal and transferring from animals to humans? Or we're just hearing other people talk about this.
Yeah.
And we're hearing other people talk about the other people who are talking about it. And we know a bunch of them are lying, right? Because we've seen them go on TV and say one thing, and then an email comes out and shows that behind the scenes, they said something else, right? Or they changed the story the next week, right? So we know for a fact they're lying. And then we hear other people explain that they're lying. But neither of us knows fucking anything. We have a feeling about it. And my point is just that this is right now.
Mm-hmm. We're in it.
Chernobyl, there's no fucking internet. They don't know what's going on. I don't know. I think it's fairly believable that it could have disappeared. If the Emily Watson character, wasn't picking it up and the Americans didn't see it on the satellites or whatever, if there wasn't direct evidence, I think they could have swept it under the rug.
Especially without our technology, yeah, because if there's no aerial shots, they could have been successful. You're right. Nowadays, we have phones and everything's on camera and technology to spread information.
And we still don't know what the fuck is going on.
And they're still getting away with stuff like this because even though we have access to all of it, they can still skew it, and it's almost easier. So even though we have this technology that should, in theory, make it more difficult to conceal horrible things and the people responsible, it doesn't seem like it is.
And I think a part of this is they just have to confuse us and complicate the matter enough that we get distracted and we forget about it, because that's what happens with the news in a lot of these things. Like a big story comes out, oh, we don't want the people to be too invested and look into this. Something else happened. Look over here.
Yeah.
And that never stops. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's not even just one thing happening. It's all the different channels and all the different networks and all the different media companies constantly doing it in different directions to get the attention of different people, and social media algorithms being able to target specifically you. And how am I going to distract you so you don't look into this and don't think too much about the fact that the wealth inequality is insane, or there's an incredible amount of corruption in the government and with the corporations, and everything's completely unfair and it's getting worse. Mm-hmm. Don't look at it. And it's working.
They scare you, they divide you, and they distract you so that, because it's easier to group up and, get rid of the people that are corrupt. But if you're scared and divided and distracted, the age-old tactics, divide, fear, conquer. And now I was just talking to Jen, our sister, the other day, and she was like, hey, did you hear about Elon Musk? Finally, it was the first commercial launch into space for people can just fly into space now and see it for an amount of money, right? You can go into space. And I didn't know. And she's like, that sucks. Like, nobody know. Like, who am I? It used to be when we landed on the moon, the whole world was sitting in front of their black and white TV, jumping up and down in bars, and everything was like camaraderie. I didn't know. We sent regular people up into space, but there's so much shit and so many things going on, and you have access because it's not just channel 4 and 5. You have your phone. You have access to a billion different crazy things. That there is no more like, the distractions aren't camaraderie based or small enough that, you can talk to your neighbor about it. It's like you have to find somebody who's in the same vein as you and that's following some of the same stuff as you. Like I can talk to you about a lot of stuff because we're into a lot of the same stuff. I could talk to one of my coworkers and it's talking to an alien because they don't know nothing that I'm saying.
Yeah, try and explain an NFT to them and see what happens.
I did today. It was a mistake. It was a big mistake.
This is why you need to have a diverse group of people at the table of the stream of information that's flowing into your mind. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much going on And if you just have a couple of people that are sort of in the same domain, they're going to 24 hours a day have really important things to tell you. From the little sector of reality that they can see, there's always something relevant going on. And then there's going to be 99% of other stuff happening in reality that they don't talk about, that they don't mention. That's also really important. But, you know, it's that conspiracy board of reality is so complicated and big, you can't see everything. So that's why you have to diversify. That, I don't know, that was my thought when you were giving that example. I go through that same thing too, where I'll hear something, I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Oh, that happened 5 months ago? You'd think I would have heard about it, but it took 5 months because there was 5 months of other bullshit getting in the way, distracting me, right, from getting to that relevant nugget that I would have been really interested in.
To some degree, you have to be open-minded to other things. You know, if I, like, will say that NFT example, I tell my coworker, and it's just, oh, well, if I can't hold it like a painting, it's not real and I don't care. Fair enough. Like some stuff, you don't have time to open your mind up to everything. And some you're just like disagree with. But it's important, I think, to have some level of open-mindedness to, other things, other sources of information. Because we've said before, but it's a red flag if your group is all in agreement and all kind of talking about the same stuff.
Well, I think that in your example where you're hearing a story from our sister, that should set an alarm off. Oh, I'm missing a piece of the puzzle, right? There's someone missing from the table. That should just be a signal that you need to shuffle people around or find someone new.
Yeah, and to be intentional and prioritize. Because if you're just kind of also wide open to whatever is floating into your brain through your phone, through the TV, you know, you might be getting a ton of random shit, but you're not finding what you actually value and spending time there. You can easily get caught up in whatever distractions instead of spending time in places that you're genuinely like more interested in, but maybe it's harder to find, or there's less information, or it's also just not as fun. These easy distractions like the TikToks and the Instagrams, they are so distracting because they're so entertaining and they're so full of nothing, but they make you laugh or whatever it is. They're just literally crafted to fucking addict you to their product. So if you give too much into that and you just stay on TikTok all day, every day, well, then there's something that you are probably curious about, you want to learn about, but you don't have the time because you were busy, fully distracted by stuff that you don't even really care about. You weren't intentional.
Yeah, so I want to introduce a metaphor that I think will help us talk about this. So let's just imagine that you're walking on a path, right? This is like the path of life. And you're one of these people that has a goal, right? You know what you're trying to do with your life, and you can see it at the end of the path. You have a clear goal, and you're walking down this path, and it's going really well. You're making slow progress towards your goal, and you look to the side, and there's a monkey playing the piano, right? And then the question is, well, how long do you look at the monkey, right? It's crazy. It's interesting. But now you're not looking at your path and you're not walking anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when you're talking about this being distracted by TikToks and all of that, that is literally just being surrounded by monkeys, playing different instruments, so much so that you don't even know where the path goes. You don't know what your goal is anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the worst possible scenario.
Mm-hmm. And the other, whatever, I don't know how to say it, is you're very focused on your destination, on your objective, and you're good at not indulging in these distractions. And then you get there, and now you're a dentist, or now you have kids, and you're not happy at all. You're just like, this was my goal for 10 years. I got it. And I'm not happy because maybe not the monkeys, but at some times you have to like detour from the path to get an objective view to say, okay, I'm highly focused. You know, am I overly focused? And is this what I really want? And sometimes you do need to wander down little side paths and just check some shit out just to kind of detach and make sure you're kind of changing or growing and seeing different realities, because you can implant one goal in there, which I've done, and the deeper you go, the less likely you are to let it go, because you're like, no, I've for 10 years wanted to be a dentist or an actor or whatever, or have kids.
You're pot committed.
Yeah. So there is something to also breaking away, taking some time off, getting some perspective on other paths, maybe not pure dancing monkeys, but you go down some stupid thing that you don't know about. You're like, and I always like fall into shit. I go deep, and then I'm like, learn a lot, and then I think this is what I'm going to do forever, and then I'm like, it was interesting, and then I do something else.
I think it's good to have these two extremes, right? Because I think we're going to come up with these different examples. So now we have the worst case scenario of just being completely distracted, that you don't even know where the path is, and then going the opposite direction where you just focus on the path and nothing else, so much so that when you get to the end, it turns out it was a bad choice. You didn't diversify enough in the beginning. You didn't broaden your views. You didn't explore enough. Okay, so here's another way to look at it, because I think it's obvious why distractions can be bad, right? If too many distractions are obviously bad. I find I use distractions a lot, kind of like when I'm too anxious or depressed, right? So this is like I'm walking down the path, and now if I think about my life too much, if I look down at that goal, I'm so anxious or depressed that like looking at the goal sort of is horrifying, and I start taking steps backwards.
Right.
Like emotionally, I can't handle it if I look at my life and examine what's happening, and I back up. Now, is it better to just continue backing up because I'm having an emotional problem? Or at that moment, what if I look to the side and I entertain myself by looking at the dancing monkey?
Right.
That's kind of what I do.
Right.
I'm falling into a depression, and then I distract myself by playing a video game. And it sort of works. The problem is I don't progress, but I'm trying to prevent myself from falling too deep in the hole. What do you think? Is that good or bad? Like, that's the reality of my life. I don't know if I can defend this, but that's what I'm doing.
I have a very similar, I'll get stuck, I'll just call it overthinking something. Yeah, I'm anxious or nervous about it. And sometimes I see myself trying to just figure something out that isn't figure outable. Or I'll use this example, trying to understand somebody else. Like somebody is hurting me and I'm having problem in this relationship, and I'm trying to figure out why they would be doing that. I think there's a healthy amount of figuring out why somebody is bothering you. You're never going to get in their brain and know what they're doing, and if their intents are ill, or if that's just the type of person they are. I find it beneficial to kind of muse about it and say, oh, every time I'm with this person, I get upset when they try and tell me what to do, or they're controlling. So I think there's like a good amount of shedding light on something I didn't see before, becoming aware of it. Like, oh, so they're controlling and I get upset and I lash out and that bugs me. Okay. Then, for example, next time I see that person, they do it and I'm not shocked and I don't respond the same way. I'm at just, oh, it is true. They kind of have the same patterns. So I don't know if I said anything. The moment I start getting stressed and I just turn on Family Guy, I avoid it. But if I'm like, okay, my brain is in a negative cycle, it's, repeating the same shit, and then maybe I need a distraction, I guess it's, again, more intentional. All right, I'm going to put on a show. I need a distraction. I know what's going on, and I need to kind of get out of this space, or I need to go on a walk. So anyway, you can speak next. I don't know if I said anything right there.
Here's what you've introduced now. We need to add to the metaphor reflection, but then the other thing you're talking about is similar to the anxiety depression thing, where it's like you see yourself spinning the wheels, right? Mentally you're not being productive, and maybe that is the proper time to distract yourself, because you go to sleep, you do something else, you wake up and you come back to reality. Oh, there's the answer. It's like you put it on the back burner of your brain. You're no longer totally focused on it. And different neurons are looking at it and it's doing something else. And it just solves itself.
Yeah.
It makes more sense with what you're talking about. Like if you're struggling thinking about something that a friend did or a relationship, and you know that your thinking is not productive. It's not clear to me that that solves anything with anxiety or depression. That's why I was asking that question. Because like when I'm using distractions to ease my anxiety, sort of hoping that at the end of it, I'll be able to stand up, look down the path, and then continue walking forward.
I'm more of a rip the Band-Aid off guy. Like if I get shot, I want to pull that bullet out, even if it's better to like wait, let a doctor do it, and then stitch it up and whatever. I want it done. And I think we're talking about like more longevity. Like I can't solve this problem tonight, and it's not healthy to think I can. So let me continue the journey and know that in time it will alleviate itself if I'm working slowly towards it. It's just like pacing. Like I can't go 100 degrees now. I'm going to work my brain into a fit. And I can't just go the opposite where it's like I just don't want to think about it. So I'm just doing everything that doesn't matter, that distracts me. We keep saying the happy medium. And this is a good analogy, I think, for this. Maybe you'll make something better of it. When you're thinking of like an actor's name, you're like, God, what is that fucking guy's name in that movie? And you're with friends, you're like, oh yeah, what is that? Fuck, I know him. It's on the tip of my fucking tongue. Everyone looks it up on their phone because it alleviates that pain. But I was doing this with Chris, our other brother. Don't look it up and try to forget it. And then 3 hours later, you go, it's Jason Statham. And you're like, yes, thank you. It's Jason Statham. So it's like a more rewarding long-term approach as to, all right, look it up. Like solve it right now. You can't sometimes, or it's just, take that long haul.
The back burner thing works, right? And we can add this to the metaphor. It sounds like now you have a Jeep, okay? So you have a Jeep and you're driving down the path, and at a certain point, you're going to run out of gas. And so when you run out of gas, is it wise to continue hitting the accelerator and just trying to push it forward, or accept that you're out of gas and take a break?
Yeah.
The way I experience that version is sort of when I get actual life work done, where I'm making progress in my life or I'm accomplishing something, I feel really good about it. And maybe I have enough that I'm working all day on that shit, and it's really exciting. And now it's the middle of the night, and I just finished working on something that I love. I can't sleep because I've just been running the engine all day. I've burned out my brain, where it would be more productive to be able to sleep well that night and be more productive the next day. And so maybe that last hour or two of work, if instead I was watching Family Guy, or in my case, going to Night City, if I spend those 2 hours in there, maybe I'm going to be more productive, because then there's gas in the tank the next day.
Stop 3 hours earlier, unwind, and stay in like that present calm state. And the word you brought up that I hadn't thought about is reflection. I feel like that will help me a lot. You say you burn out on the path and you have a couple options. You can take a detour and just distract yourself, or you can also refuel by kind of closing your eyes, not going anywhere, and just reflecting on stuff, on your life, or just the path. I think you're right. With the monkey, you're not solving the problem, but you're relaxing yourself into a better place to try and solve the problem. I feel like that's the time to kind of drive off the path and you go on a bender, or, let's say like somebody has a midlife crisis. They don't know what's going on. Sometimes you kind of got to have that midlife crisis or whatever and fuck up. So then you drive off the path and there's some new shit, and it's not like just dancing monkeys. It's just weird shit that you hadn't done. You try some new shit. You kind of expand your horizons, and then you're driving along this weird fucking path. You kind of forget the original path, and you end up merging with it. And you're like, oh yeah, this path. And then you're back there. It's a little different. And then it kind of comes back to you. Similar to the word, you remember you can't think of a word and you remember it later. So you drive off the path for maybe a year or a month or whatever. And then you have more clarity. You have an objective view on that old situation. So it's not solved because it's also different.
To me, that sounds like that could end up being destructive. Like in the moment where you don't know what's going on and you know you're not making good decisions, I think it's better to stop making decisions. I'm just giving you this reaction because personally, I think I'm a very hesitant person who wants to play it safe. Like you might have a good argument that actually driving wildly off the path will have a better outcome than stopping and looking at the monkey. But I'm not comfortable with it because I don't want to get hurt, right? Like, you know, if someone has a midlife crisis and then they have a manic episode for a year, they could literally destroy everything in their life.
Yeah.
Destroy their family, destroy their career. Like you can burn it all down. And then by the time you wake up and you go, oh yeah, this is what I want. Oops, you're fucked.
Right.
You're starting over from square one.
The other option, or the healthier option, is let the air out of the balloon slowly. So instead of letting it grow...
What balloon? Are we in a fucking balloon now? This metaphor is getting crazy.
I know, it's getting crazy. But I'm just saying, if you go too long without allowing yourself to fuck up or do some stuff, little ones. Like, so I say you do a bunch of like little failures, or little things that you don't know about and you're not sure, and you take a risk and it's crazy and it's scary and it hurts you. And then some of the air is let out of the bag of growing and whatever you want to call it. But people who play it so safe, they're not taking any distractions or fucking up enough and failing enough to get that out of their system. Then the balloon blows up and then it pops. And let's consider that pop the midlife crisis, where you didn't let the air out of the balloon slowly by doing little fuck ups, you know, whatever. Your brain couldn't hold it in, so you did something ridiculous. And now the repercussions are even graver because it built up. So maybe like baby risks that lead to failures, that lead to, I don't feel safe and I think I'm doing something wrong. I don't feel good about it, or stupid, but it's not life threatening. You're not like, I'm going to go see what it's like to murder somebody or to do something crazy. So then you just do little things like, you know, this feels weird to me. I'm going to ask this girl out on the street. They're just little baby ones that then you're like, actually, I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. But at least you tried.
If you had the wherewithal to take little steps and, you know, have little failures in different directions, you're obviously growing. That sounds more like a mentally healthy person. Mm-hmm. I think it's tricky when you're not that healthy.
I want to make one comparison because I was just thinking about it while we're talking. When we talk about, it seems better to be present on the journey, but sometimes, and this is just kind of a similarity, you know, you got to let your mind wander. You can't always be present. You have to think ahead, have future goals, or reflect on the past. So I think overall, that's what I'm trying to do for myself is I want to be present because that feels good. But then I want to, I guess, reflect and then just kind of muse about stuff. Think about the past and the future. And then I want to come out of it. That's my point, is like, I want to do a combo of reflecting and distracting. Look at the monkey for a while because I know I'm in a weird spot, and then come back to being present. Because if you're present, I feel calm, I feel good. But sometimes you can't be present and think about the future. You think about the future, you think about the past, you try and understand other people and other things for a moment of time. Maybe you sit for an hour, and if you realize you're just in 10th gear revving and you can't get there, then you ease your way back into trying just to be present and enjoy the people you're with, kind of be in the moment, and knowing that eventually you're not going to be in the moment because you're going to be thinking and musing and wondering, or you're going to end up again stuck in a negative place. But the distraction is there to get you out of the negative place. And then once you're done musing and thinking, getting you back to being present, right? It's a combo.
Well, we've introduced a lot of components of this metaphor. I'm going to try and break it down to the primordial ingredients. Like, I think what you need is the path. You're walking down the path. Maybe the monkey is there, and sometimes it's good to look at the monkey. But then what has to happen after that is the reflection period, the meditation period, the moment where you're not being distracted and you're also not moving forward.
Yeah.
We can probably say that those three things are part of the equation, right?
Those are the ingredients, and then it changes for me, you, everybody, I would guess.
So I want to get into what are some of the positive distractions, right? Because we know that distractions can be bad, and I could spend a lot of time shitting on a lot of things that are happening in pop culture, on TikTok, on YouTube, whatever, that I would consider bad distractions. But let's talk about the positive side, right? Because and we've done it in the past where it's like, we're when you have the combo of something that is superficially entertaining, but also fairly deep, and it gets your mind going. And so it's both a candy and a vegetable, or it's a nutritious piece of candy, and you get that magical combo where it's fun to watch and you're growing as a person.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's awesome. Not everything's going to be like that, right? Some things are just going to be candy, and there can be good candy. Or do you think candy is always bad?
Yes. All right. So let's just, the example of nutritious candy, we'll call it the Matrix. It expands your mind. It can, introduces new premises that can really help you develop and grow. And it's super entertaining as fuck. Our comedy movies, actually, I'll ask you right now, what are some of your favorite comedy movies?
I mean, God, the stuff that comes to mind is like when I was a kid, like Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. What's something that's more recent?
No, the kid ones are all, I think it's always like Dumb and Dumber, Tommy Boy.
I think when I was younger, it was easier to appreciate those kind of dumb comedies, right? That there's not a lot of deep stuff going on. It becomes harder the older I get, right? Now I see a comedy and I go into all this negative judgment and I'm not having fun, right? Like the only comedy we've talked about recently is Free Guy, and I had this really negative reaction to it, where like I'm judging it and I'm not finding it funny. I'm not just letting myself flow like you're supposed to when you're in a comedy. But for some reason, I'm able to do that in the more dramatic, serious movies we've talked about, like Her or Ex Machina, where they're not comedies, they're serious. But then when there is a bit of levity, it works on me. Mm-hmm. I don't know why that's the case as an adult. There's got to be some comedies that, I know. I've been watching Ted Lasso. I think that works really well. Oh, I watched the new Chappelle special. Have you seen that?
No, I want to.
Fuck, what's it called? Oh, it's called The Closer, I think. The new Dave Chappelle special. Mm-hmm. And I was fucking cracking up. And that's another interesting one. I don't often laugh at stand-up comedy. Like, there's a lot of stand-up comedians that I love, and I'll watch their podcast or other content that they do. But when they're on stage telling jokes, it just doesn't work for me for some reason. Mm-hmm. But Dave Chappelle is basically the exception. Like, everything that he does, I'm just fucking dying.
Well, you mentioned Free Guy. I think, I think the difference is that one seems a little, I don't know, disingenuous or something. But with these comedies that I think of that are classics from my past that I just love and quote and watch over and over, like Dumb and Dumber, Tommy Boy, whatever, I think there's something else, a third ingredient that you get out of it. They don't have themes in them that are necessarily super enriching, but I still get a lot out of it. And so I was thinking about, why the ones that I like, I think are very genuine. Like the director is writing or they're coming from a very genuine place. It's not, I don't know, phoned in just to entertain the masses. And all the ingredients have to still go into it. Actors that have a nice, grounded, genuine performance. They're doing crazy shit, like Chris Farley, rolling on the floor, physical comedy, but he's genuine. Like, it feels like it's still realistic. It's not just over the top. I think those kind of comedies that stick with me, they kind of give me an ability to kind of see, like, that there's genuine people and they're going through real and potentially, scary, bad, dark situations, but they're finding the humor in it. They're showing the lighter side in that you can kind of deal with intense situations, and it doesn't always have to be, fuck, how do I deal with this? They point out the comedy version of it. Comedies do that. Like, the situations can be harsh. Yeah, I'm thinking Dumb and Dumber. They were trying to kill them. They stole money on accident. They were getting killed by hitmen or something like that. And they're taking it seriously, and they're just so dumb. So I guess my overall thought is that the third ingredient is it doesn't have to maybe introduce a mind-altering, growing theme, but it can introduce ways to kind of cope with the harsh reality. And when you see it done well, of like, oh, these guys clearly are deep thinkers coming from a good spot, and they're showing it through the lens of comedy, and everything's kind of working. They stick with you, and that's like the different. We haven't really talked about that.
Well, if we go back to the metaphor, maybe another important component is that, you know, on this path of life, you're smiling, or maybe even laughing. Like if your entire journey down the path, you have this grimace on your face because everything is so difficult and there's no humor in life, well, then you're not enjoying the journey, right? And obviously that's an important component. And so if nothing else, like I think it's obviously better to have that in reality. Like I think it's better to have a laugh with a friend or a loved one as opposed to, you know, alone in a room watching a movie on your phone. But if that's all you can get, I think that's still good, right? It's good to get levity into your life, like to laugh at something. Like if then the next day you watch one of those silly comedies and then the next day you're challenged at work or you have a challenging coworker, but instead of getting mad at them, you can, you know, laugh at them. Maybe you're laughing internally, right? You're not like making fun of them, but inside you're just like this, you know, you're able to make light of it in your mind and instead of just being upset inside. That is a benefit.
Yeah, you're tapping into the ability to filter things through the lens of comedy in real life, which I think is maybe one of the most important parts of all this. And you were saying, you know, laughing and smiling and enjoying it along the way. Yes, and I'll say it differently with this kind of Eastern philosophy of feeling it along the way, feeling whatever it is that it's okay to laugh, smile. If you're sad, you cry. I feel like myself and people in general, kind of, it's not accepted to feel what you're feeling. You know, it's weakness. If you cry, something makes you sad, you can't cry in front of people, and it's kind of allowing yourself to do that. Like, this is a weird example, but I was at the Hollywood Bowl. We're watching, it's an outdoor music venue. We're watching classical music. And at the end, they shoot fireworks to the tune of the classical music. And these fireworks are exploding in the air to the music. And I was dying. I was like, oh, whoa. I was like, laughing. I don't know why. I wasn't even drunk. And my friends looked at me. I was like, I was an alien. And I was just frustrated that day or whatever, and something that just hit me, and it just fucking came out. And usually I'd be like, well, like I should chill out, but I was like literally like couldn't contain how wild it was to see that.
It's so funny because that's obviously a good thing, like falling into childlike wonder, right? Where you're actually being, you know, engaged in the world and like in awe of things that are happening. Obviously that's good. But I too have had the experience of being like your friends where someone is doing that and then you have a negative judgment. You're like, what's this maniac laughing at?
Yeah.
Calm down, right? But that's not what you should be doing, right? You should be laughing too.
But I think I'd have that same reaction too to some people. But that's usually when I see that it's kind of disingenuous or like a little bit forced or put on, you know, or like trying to get attention. Like it truly wasn't. It just came out. Like if I saw something that I thought that it would look genuine, I don't think I'd be as bothered. But I guess you don't really know.
They might be really good at faking it. Yeah.
They could be faking it, you know?
But we both appreciate the authenticity, right? So if it's authentic, that's awesome. Okay, so let me spin that then. What about an inauthentic person laughing? Do you have a judgment about that?
I probably have a judgment, yes. But now I also just don't. If I don't think it's funny, I'm not going to laugh with them. And I'm not going to be rude.
What about this? I'll make it more specific. You're watching a movie with some friends. You're watching Free Guy, okay? It comes to the parts that are obviously jokes, right? They're like broadcasting it to the audience. Like now you're supposed to laugh. And then you see that your friends laugh. But you also know it's not fucking funny. Yeah. So you know that they're playing a game, right? They're playing the game of like, oh, I'm supposed to laugh now. I'm a human. And they're faking it. Now, should you judge that? Because they're laughing is a good thing.
No, but I do judge that. because they're not a person. They're just they're like a part of the hive. I judge that, but then I think I have a pretty good intuition because I'll be with certain friends and we're dying laughing at like similar moments, and I could be wrong, but it seems just like an authentic childhood type of a raw connection, and I love that's way better than if I'm with a friend who just laughs at the proper moments. Like I'm still with somebody and it's cool, and there's usually shades of gray, like they're laughing at those moments, but I don't know. But it is definitely more annoying, and my judgment triggers a little bit if I think it's disingenuous.
I don't know how to feel about it. I mean, I know I have the judgment, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because like I don't like that they're not being authentic, but at least the thing they're faking is joy. So that seems like that should be a positive, but I still feel weird about it.
Yeah, that's so funny. And to each their own. It's like maybe we're wrong, but probably like in many cases we're probably right, and they're just kind of phoning it in or doing what the norm is. I think I feel better because that I'm not following into it. I feel a little bit better. Like I used to be like, oh yeah, and like play the game, and like I know it's not funny, and I don't believe that they're genuinely laughing, but I'll laugh along because I don't want to, seem socially awkward or socially difficult. But now I pleasantly just, if I don't think something's funny, I don't laugh, and I feel like I'm starting to realize that people, it's hard for them to be around me, or it's like difficult for them to be around me in public because they feel like I'm being difficult, and I'm not being mean, but somebody will ask me something and I just think about it and answer, and they jump in and they're like, oh, and they're trying to make light of the situation because I'm just kind of slow and I guess in explore mode and thinking, and I'm not just saying things that I know are accepted. I just say what I think, and I'm definitely less accepted, or I definitely even notice people feeling uncomfortable. But I mean, I'm aware when people feel uncomfortable, and I definitely I don't want to do that, and I will address those situations. But yeah, I've been seeing that switch in my life.
It's funny now I'm thinking about Norm Macdonald, and I think part of the reason I appreciated him so much was that it was not obvious that he was joking, sort of like he's not broadcasting that now you're supposed to laugh. And so people that those robotic laughers who are faking joy, they don't fucking get it. They don't know when they're supposed to laugh. But I'm laughing, right? Like I'm in on whatever Norm is doing, and he's moving me, and I'm laughing, and the audience isn't, right? And it's this weird moment where you're like, the robots aren't laughing because he's not telling them when to laugh, but like it's working on me. And it's also funny that his name is Norm, right? Because you keep pointing out, like, this is about people following the norm. You're supposed to act this way. Make other people comfortable, goddammit. Follow the rules. So I was going to bring up the analogy of the boiling frog. You put a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put a frog in cold water and you slowly warm it up, you'll boil it to death because the transition is really slow. In our world, there is the slow creep of corruption, things happening in the government and in corporations that if we were to pay attention, then people would be really angry and there'd be a revolution. But because they've got us distracted, it's sort of like they're slowly turning up the heat and we're not noticing because it's happening slow and we're looking somewhere else. We're looking at the monkey playing the piano. But then we got this really unique situation. Like, so we've been distracted this whole time as a society, but this crazy thing happened where the world shut down and they locked everyone in their homes for a year. And so in this situation, it's possible that the distractions would continue. Everyone watches Tiger King and then goes on their social media and talks about Tiger King, and they don't talk about the reality of what's going on in the world. That sort of happened, but not entirely. Now we're seeing this weird transition where people don't want to go back to their shitty jobs. There's like these weird things happening in America and other places where, because there was this moment where the illusion was broken and the distraction stopped for a moment, people are kind of looking around and going, fuck, I don't like what my life has become. I don't like being on the hamster wheel that they have me on. Like, it's ridiculous to be working this many hours in a day, to doing this thing that I hate. Like, this is silly, but you don't notice it until there's a disruption. And I think we just went through that.
One thing too to note is that, like, the hamster wheel, if you have a corporate job, and like you said, now they went remote and things didn't explode, and they're like, wow, I can only go in the office 2 days a week and I get the same amount, if not more, work done.
Everything gets done. And then the company's like, okay, yeah, but now you got to come back and sit here for 8 hours. And you're like, wait a second.
And you're like, and I'm healthier and I get to spend more time at with my family and sleep in and get my work done when I want. And I can skip traffic for 2 hours and it works. And how can you convince me now that it doesn't? But I think that, sadly, if they gave an ultimatum, I think people would be like, that was a fun break. That was a fun summer vacation. But if the companies start saying, come back 9 to 5 back, then they would do it.
I thought that people weren't going back to work. Isn't there a lot of stuff happening in the job market?
Yeah.
Where like people aren't filling the positions?
Well, they're not going back to the office.
But I'm talking about, like, aren't there a lot of jobs out there that now no one's willing to take? Isn't that what's sort of happened with the job market, or am I wrong?
Well, all I know about that is that every restaurant has a now hiring sign up. But the reason is because if you got laid off and you work in a restaurant during the pandemic, they're paying you probably the same or more money to not go back, or they're still paying you. So no restaurant workers are going back to work because they're getting paid the same amount to stay home and do whatever they want.
This is ultimately a good thing, right? Like, I think as long as these disruptions are not devastating, like, obviously COVID-19 has been devastating and it's been bad for a lot of people, but the jolt to the system might be a positive thing.
Yes.
Right? It's a disruption to the boiling frog.
And that's crazy too, because now everyone knows. But it took a worldwide pandemic, I guess, for anyone to act on it. Like, I didn't really know. I hated going in at 8 a.m. I don't sleep early and all these issues. And it sucks being next to your coworkers 9 hours a day, especially if you don't get along. But everybody did it. You know, some people probably knew that they could get the same amount of work done at home, but nobody tried it. Like, nobody experimented. It just wasn't the norm. And that makes you think, what else is out there like that, right? Like, that forced it in the workplace. Now you have to let them work remote. Otherwise, you're right. Okay, you're right. Some people are getting offered, all right, you got to come back in, and they are saying no. Like, nah, it's better this way. We're getting our work done. If you are saying I need to come back to my 9 to 5 job, how it used to be, I'll find a new job, because a lot of the other jobs are allowing me this freedom. So they do get to have some leverage there. So now I'm just wondering, that was the one that popped up strictly because you couldn't go to work because you would spread COVID on your coworkers. What else is there? Like, is this the beginning of, or do you need a jolt? Or can people just slowly be like, you know what, I actually don't want to do this job. I can do something else. I don't know. I guess it rattled it into motion.
So if it is the case that the distractions benefit the evil corporations, right? Whoever these people are that are trying to manipulate us, and maybe they don't have ill intent, but it definitely benefits Twitter if there's a bunch of people on there and they're getting clicks and they're getting advertising. Why would a company like Apple introduce focus modes to address distraction? Because now we have the cell phone and we know it's bad for us. Mm-hmm. So why would Apple add that mode?
And Instagram did a day off where they stopped their app for a day as a, hey, get off of Instagram for a day.
So why would they do that if, in theory, it benefits them if people are constantly on there, being distracted by their bullshit?
Well, my cynical brain says they have to get ahead of it and pretend basically that they're on board, because they know nobody's going to fucking look at the focus and stop using their products. Every fucking person realizes that they use their phone too much. Like, it's not like they're revealing some secret information. So I think it behooves Apple to pretend like they're on board and say, so guys, look at focus mode. Our phones are awesome. They are a tool that you can use for all these things. But, there's clearly a problem out there where your kids are stuck on them. You're stuck on it. So we're helping the problem. Here's focus mode. Look, if you've been on for 5 hours, chill out. It doesn't change anything because people are going to still do it. But then they look good. That's my cynical brain of why they're doing it.
I think that might be a component, but I also think they need to address it before we fall off the cliff. Right, because people are there's more and more of these documentaries coming out. There's more and more attention being paid to the fact that this stuff is terrible. More evidence is piling up. This is terrible for your mental health.
Yeah.
And if Apple's customers, if the phone is so successful that it literally completely destroys their minds to where they are no longer functional, they are no longer a customer. Right? If their customers all commit suicide or if they all fall into a depression and then they lose their job and they can't pay the bills anymore, then they can't have a phone. Like, if things get really, really grim and it goes off the cliff, then they lose a customer. So it's like now they're in this balance of like, okay, we got to distract you. We're selling distractions, but it can't be so bad that you die.
Yeah. Well, here would be an analogy to comparing it to what happened with COVID and everyone now works from home. Say there was a electrical storm. This makes no scientific sense, but then everyone's iPhone died and they couldn't fix the iPhones for a month or something. And everyone got happier. And they were like, I'm 50% happier. Then that would be another jolt to the system where then it comes back online. And people throw their phones in the trash. And if their company's like, no, we need to call you on the phone or whatever, you need the phone. And they're like, I was way happier without the phone. And now my phone's in the trash.
God, what would happen if there was like a solar flare?
Yeah, that's it.
Everyone's phones went away for, a period of time, right? And society didn't collapse. Like it's some temporary period of time, like a week. That might be enough time for a huge amount of people to notice, oh, I feel way better. My life in 1 week, my life has improved exponentially.
Yeah. You can't leave it up to the personal choice. Like, obviously the fix is to choose for yourself. Is this healthy for you? Is it not? Experiment with it. If it's not, then, reduce it. Do the healthy thing. Same with work, but nobody thought, is going to work and driving 2 hours healthy? Or maybe they even realized, I don't love this rat race. But it was the norm, and they didn't take the personal responsibility. They didn't reflect enough to say, is this what's making me happy, or is this just what everyone's doing, and this is what the world tells me success is? People do that, but the majority are just, I guess, robots or hive-minded, and it literally has to break. This type of jolt has to happen for them to do it. And not only does it have to happen, but all the other robots around them have to agree that it's like good, because now like everyone's like, oh yeah, this is good, this is healthy, oh yeah, totally. And it is, because they feel healthier, let's say, with the work from home thing. But yeah, I guess just for the fewer free thinking people that just do what they think is good and healthy, and some people who live in a van but they're super healthy, they're off of the social standard, they're unplugged from the matrix, and they're deciding what they want to do, and they're throwing their phones away or using them less. But the majority, isn't doing that.
All right, well, let's wrap this up. I want to go back to Night City.
What's that?
Spoiler alert for Cyberpunk 2077. Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves, is implanted in your brain. And you're walking around with Keanu Reeves having this really weird internal conflict with a separate entity inside your mind. I fucking love it, dude. It's cool.
Corps have long controlled our lives, taken lots, and now they're after our souls. I've declared war not because capitalism's a thorn in my side or out of nostalgia for an America gone by. This war's a people's war against a system that spiraled out of our control. It's a war against the fucking forces of entropy. You still don't see it, but you will one day.
Last thing I want to do, bring up, we just talked about phones, and this is very obvious, I think, but why is the phone clearly obviously the biggest culprit of a distraction?
It's easier for them to put a monkey playing the piano on your phone than to give you an app that actually makes you self-reflective and progress in your life.
That's it.
And they're just playing the short game where it's like okay, let's just imagine Apple versus Android. And in the very beginning, Steve Jobs made this decision that every choice we make on the iPhone, we're going to do something that will improve the customer's life. We're going to put things in there that make you become self-reflective, think about your goals, work on your self-development. Every choice we make is to do that. And meanwhile, Android is playing the short-term game of like, no, distract them. What makes money is attention. They just have to be looking at it, right? It doesn't matter if 10 years from now they get better and have a better life. We can't make money off of that. We can make money right now by putting a monkey playing the piano on the phone. Do that times 1 trillion.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, what happens? Probably Apple goes out of business and Google succeeds, right? But if for some reason Apple didn't go out of business and 10 years go by and we see, everyone who owns an iPhone is doing 100 times better than all the people that own Androids.
Totally.
And maybe you can't even put your finger on it, but they've advanced in their career. They have a great relationship with their community. They've built families, right? They're better on every level. They're helping the world, right? They're more productive in the world. So it's not just a selfish thing. They're like, these are the most valuable people for society. If we could have done that for 10 years and everyone looks at it, I think people would then go, I should buy an iPhone.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to buy the thing that makes me a better human being. But no one's playing that game. That doesn't exist.
That's the long game. Yeah. A higher meaning or, like a good mission objective. Well, imagine this. Imagine a kid, a science experiment. There's a group of 10-year-old kids. One group can only watch the content on Netflix and their original shows and shit for the rest of for 10 years. The other kids can only have access to HBO's shows and what they have. Those kids, I guarantee you, are going to be more healthy, enriched people when they hit 20.
God, that's such an interesting experiment. I wish we could actually do that. Like you trap kids, you lock them in a room, and all they can do is watch TV. And Group A watches HBO and Group B watches Netflix. And I think what you would end up with, Group B is just a bunch of psychopath losers. And maybe there's some people in Group A who actually succeed in life. That would be really cool.
You don't even have to do it. It's true. Like I can tell you, my hunch is that those HBO kids would be better off.
All right. Okay, we're done, right? There's nothing else in your notes. We're wrapping it up. All right. Thank you for listening. I always forget to mention that you can email us at thedimbrothers@gmail.com. What else do we have to say?
Nothing. This was the Brothers Dim. Well, welcome.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.